We're leaving it in, baby. I don't actually have any say over that. You could cut me from the podcast.
I'll just like divide the screen down the middle.
You just mute everything that comes out of my mouth for the whole time.
I had to do that a little bit last time because your connection was bad. It's like, we missed Dallas for a while. Well, time to get rid of that section.
Excellent. What a day.
We are talking about Spider-Gwen back from 2015. Who wrote this? Who was the creative team, Dallas?
Jason Latour and Robbie Rodriguez came together in the midst of Dan Slott's big Spider-Verse storyline to flesh out the idea of a super spider-powered Gwen Stacey. And it was such a hit in the little tie-in issue way back in 2014 or 15. I know this came out in 15. I don't remember when Edge of Spider-Verse came out.
I think that one was 15, at least according to the app that I used to look at it.
Perfect. So back in 2015, it was so popular that a whole series got spun out of this random universe. Even though the whole point of Marvel at that point was to get rid of all the alternate universes. Remember that episode we did about Secret Wars? How they got rid of all the alternate universes? Yeah, except this one. This one got to stay.
They got rid of it, but then they brought it back.
Mm-hmm.
Back from the dead. And see, funny thing about this just is this is going to be like the second time in recent memory that the person who chose to read the comic is not here. And so, which means we can say whatever we want, which is fun, you know? It's a little bit freeing.
We don't have to feel bad about dunking on the person's thing. I don't really want to dunk. I like Spider-Gwen a lot.
We don't need to dunk, but like if we needed to, it's all on the table now.
We should just Photoshop JP's head right here, just crying the whole time. Yeah, you can tell we're reading a superhero book, so that means JP picked it. And
so Spider-Gwen, the preface is, it's almost exactly, if you've seen Enter the Spider-Verse, it's pretty much that, where she's like, I got bitten by a radioactive spider. My dad was a police chief. I couldn't save my friend Peter because he turned himself into the lizard. And it goes through it really quickly even. And it doesn't spend any more time on it than that.
I really, really, really like the first issue of this, Edge of the Spider-Verse, because it reminds me so much of Amazing Fantasy 15 and just those old...
What is Amazing Fantasy 15 for those of us that are Philistines?
Well, you Philistine. It's the first appearance of Spider-Man. It was written by Stan Lee and art done by Steve Ditko. They were co-creators on it. And back in the day, man, Stan and his crew of artists and co-creators, I want to specify that because, like, a lot of the time, writers get all the credit for these stories. But especially back then, Stan Lee would literally come up to Jack Kirby and be like, I think this is a paragraph's worth of what I want to happen in that issue. And then walk away. And Jack Kirby would plot the entire story. And then Stan would come back and put in the dialogue balloons. And it was such a 50-50 that even at one point, in the famous Fantastic Four 49, maybe it's 48, when Silver Surfer gets introduced, Stan opened up the page and he said, who's this guy on the surfboard? And Jack Kirby was like, I thought he'd be a fun introduction. This is the Silver Surfer. He's our character now. So, yeah, Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, they came together, and in 15 pages, they gave what you have now seen in 2 different Spider-Man movies. 15 pages. They told the whole great power, great responsibility, dead Uncle Ben, Peter was a wrestler for a minute, Peter's then a crappy superhero, then a good superhero. All that. 15 pages. That would take like 2 years in comics now. And so it was really fun in Edge of the Spider-Verse to just be like, here's the origin, here's the whole story. Boop. If we come back to it, great. Which they did come back to it, and I'm happy they did, but it was really refreshing to get like the whole thing in such a short period of time, you know?
Yeah, it's pretty much just like these 2 pages. It's like, there's your origin story. You know, you got the lizard, she's playing in a band, she gets bit by a spider, there's James Jonah Jameson being a jerk like, you know, he do. And that's your whole origin story. And it gets right into it.
I love that every character gets rewritten except J. Jonah Jameson. They're like, nope, we struck gold on that one. There's no universe where he is not a dick.
It's like he is the unifying villain across all Spider-Man stories.
All of it. All of it. So yeah, I love that first issue of Edge of Spider-Verse. I think it's so kinetic and fun. It's got such fun pacing. It introduces you to this whole great world and shows you a character that's immediately likable, right?
Yeah, and she's got a really good character design. I love the outfit.
Oh, it's so good.
I mean, I've seen it in Enter the Spider-Verse, but just really well done.
I mean, it's good enough that the character was invented 3 years before being one of the main characters in a Hollywood blockbuster. Like, that's saying something, you know? With some of these IPs being approaching 85 years old, Spider-Gwen was just good enough that they're like, yeah, put her in. You know? Because of that iconic design from Robbie Rodriguez.
Yeah. So, like, first impressions, it's really great. The colors are good. It's really solid. I don't think it's, like, blow me out of the water, this is the best thing ever, but, like, you enjoy it. It's fun.
Mm-hmm. It's infectiously fun. It's not like... There are a lot of comics that the two of us really love to talk about where it's like, this is all a fun story that means depression.
It means something.
It means, like, there's...
You better have some meaning or I'm never buying this again.
There's this deep meat in there that, you know, just the meat's just real deep. And, wow, I just said the meat's real deep. But... I'm sorry. Okay. It's deep. There's something to it. And I think sometimes I fall into the trap of thinking that something has to be that to be good. When it doesn't, you know? Like, it can genuinely just be really, really fun. And just have, like, some good, strong morals, some good heroic characters.
Yeah, and I think the characters do that really well. Like, even if, like, the things going or the story behind it isn't, like, this has some deep meaning. If you got some solid characters, it goes a long way.
Yeah, like, there's a reason that we all love the first Star Wars, right? It doesn't have that deep of a meaning. Like, you can write into it a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
But really, it's kid wants to be good. These are the bad guys. Kid will be good even when it's hard.
Mm-hmm. It's like space wizards and sci-fi. It's like it doesn't do either of those the best, but just the fact that it's like kind of a universal story about characters that you do like Luke, Han, and Leia are fantastic characters. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it can get you really far to have some people that you like.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just rehashing the Spider-Man story, you know? It's not breaking new ground, but it's doing it with a really fun punk rock new aesthetic and a really fun twist on the main character, making it Gwen Stacey instead of Peter Parker. Because they are vastly unique characters, right? Peter was very much kind of a bitter, bookish nerd that was so wrought with guilt that he became a hero, whereas Gwen is raised by a police chief, you know? And, like, he's a good cop. And I also think it's so interesting, all the way back in 2015, they're like, some cops are bastards. Well, that's relevant today. But Kevin Stacey was a good cop, you know? And he showed Gwen what it meant to be a hero, and she was following in his footsteps, and I thought that was a really interesting twist.
Yeah. And honestly, it looks really stinking good.
It's
the colors are fun, and I love things that are kind of like washed a certain color like that. And so it's really pretty, and the visuals just kind of like really do pop out and match kind of the feeling of the whole story. And even the cover. It's so pretty. It's
just neon and fun. It's just punk rock, you know? Did you know they actually got an indie band to record that Face It Tiger song?
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you can go and you can listen to Face It Tiger. It's like 2 minute long. It's pretty good.
That's kind of funny. That's like the Murder Falcon has a soundtrack basically that he made for it.
Or like this week in Thor was mad at Iron Man, so he put Iron Man's personal number on Mjolnir and just threw it to Earth so people could call Iron Man. And you can call that number and talk to Iron Man this week. There's like Robert Downey Jr. is on the other end. Just a recorded message from Iron Man.
That's funny.
Yeah. So comic can be fun sometimes.
Sometimes.
What do you think? I think the biggest thing that Spider-Gwen brings to the table for me, beyond just being fun and refreshing, is the reimagining of a lot of these characters.
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
See, that was actually one thing that was kind of intriguing to me, because like I'm finally like crossing a threshold from like comic noob to
comic doob.
Well, I was going to say something about Virgin, but then I decided to like scratch that in general. Anyway, I know some things about comics now. And so this is one of the like the first times that I've read an actual like alternate reality story where it's just the same characters in different ways. And I'm like, I know who these people are. If you watch the Secret Wars episode, I'd be like, yeah, Captain or Baron, I don't know. I don't even know who he is. But here it's like, oh, it's Matt Murdock and Frank Castle. And I'm like, hey, I know these guys. And partially because I read some of the books, and partially because I watched the Daredevil TV show on Netflix, which was pretty good.
It was pretty good. I honestly enjoyed this more the second time through, because when I first read this, I was a little bit of a dum-dum.
No, I'm kidding.
I've been reading comics for like 2 years at that point, and I didn't have anyone to talk to about them, so it was just kind of like my own repository of knowledge. And so I read this and I was like, oh, that's so fun. Look, I remembered the evil Matt Murdock, right? I remembered that Peter was the Lizard, but like, I didn't realize that this cop, this random, like all the random throwaway characters are important. Like this cop right here, that...
Officer Grimm?
Officer Grimm, that's the Thing. That's Ben Grimm.
Oh, really?
Yeah, from Yancey Street. And Foggy Nelson, the good lawyer, is Foggy from Daredevil, which I probably realized back then, but I didn't remember until I got to it here. And I thought that was fun, because in the original Daredevil comics, it's Matt that wants to be pro bono, and Foggy's the only reason they ever make any money. And so it's funny to see that flip. Foggy didn't become bad, but he is now like the much nicer, good lawyer. He wasn't ever bad, but he's nicer, and Daredevil is no bueno. Or, I mean, all of the... did you end up reading issue 5?
Yeah.
With the reimagining of the Black Cat. I thought that was really fun. And seeing her as a French thief that only stole things that could never be replaced. I thought that was a really fun twist.
I'm pretty sure that's a John Mulaney sketch, is stealing things that could never be replaced. Look that up sometime, it's funny. But yeah, so it was interesting to me, because that's the first time when I'm like, oh, look at the different characters that I know, but have feelings of. And so it was actually cool for me. And so I can understand more why they do that, because it's kind of like, how do you tell a story that's been told 30 times without ticking anybody off by changing things? You make it an alternate reality, then you can do whatever you want. And so it did a good job of kind of like having the background of the characters play into their current state.
So let me ask you this question. It's a little bit tangential, but it's related. The MCU has built on this concept that honestly was pioneered by comics, right? Of checking in like every year in comics, every month, into a chapter that eventually culminates in a much bigger story down the line. And you can jump in and out, but if you go the whole way and you remember all the little details and relationships and remember the continuity, it has a much bigger payoff at the end. And the MCU made billions of dollars doing that, right? And the DCEU has never really been able to do it well. And it's honestly kind of mirrored in DC Comics. They have to do a big, like, earth-shattering, reset the continuity thing, like, every 5 years. Because they are so bad at telling people no. Basically, if you come with an interesting pitch, they'll greenlight it, and then 5 years from now, they'll deal with the fact that it did not tie in well with anything else that was going on around it. And so they're honestly kind of abandoning this idea of continuity, particularly in their movies moving forward. They're going to introduce this idea of a multiverse where you can tell any interesting story you want and just say it's on a different Earth than whatever else is going on. So, like, Robert Pattinson can be Batman and Ben Affleck can be Batman, depending on which Batman you want for your particular story. And I want to know which approach you feel more drawn to.
That's funny, because they did this with us, is they were like, we're going to make something cool, and then delete it in Secret Wars. I don't really know. I guess I'm a snob, so I'm like, whatever's good, I'll read it. And if it's not good, I don't care what's the method of it. It's just out. Don't care. Don't have time for that. You know how many video games I have to play? Which sounds terrible. Like, I have no loyalty, but
it's true.
That's kind of honestly how I feel.
Yeah, okay. So it doesn't matter the mode as long as it's good. I feel like, in my experience, I've been a lot more pleased with some of these Elseworld stories because they actually allow things to happen. I feel like we're running into a really, really frustrating place right now where, particularly in Flash comics and Spider-Man comics, it happens a lot, where you aren't allowed to let those characters grow because they are valuable IPs that are meant to be perennial. And if you let them grow past a certain extent, they are no longer relatable. People no longer care about them, right?
Yeah.
And that wasn't a problem that Stan Lee had to address in the 1960s, right?
Yeah.
He got to write 100 issues of Spider-Man, and Spider-Man got to grow up that whole time. And then the next people that came on said, all right, Now, how do we simultaneously keep everyone that's been here entertained, and how do we get new people? And this last week because of The Flash, one of the changes they made only lasted a year before getting retconned again. And everyone's like, you guys usually give it a longer leash than that to be crappy? Come on. And so there's this interesting idea where, like, comics in continuity are becoming so boring. They're becoming so hard to sink your teeth into. And, like, I honestly feel like if I wasn't already invested in reading monthly comics, I probably wouldn't start now.
It does feel a little bit like beating a dead horse.
A little bit. And I think the soaring popularity of manga and anime speaks to the different approach to this, where they do have long-form stories, but they have endings, you know?
Yeah.
No matter how good My Hero Academia is, it's going to end. No matter how long One Piece has been going, we know it's coming to an end, right? We know Naruto came to an end. We knew, My Hero, flipping Full Metal Alchemist came to an end, you know?
Yeah.
No matter how big the property, how crazy the world, they have a finite amount of time, and so they actually get to let things happen and end.
Well, and it's interesting because then what they did with Naruto, because it was like the biggest thing, and so it's like they obviously do want to keep publishing about it, and they just made it about his son Boruto. Mm-hmm. And they're retelling like a new story with new elements, like in a different main character, and so it's kind of like, it's nice because people actually get to move on.
And that's what's really interesting, again, with the example from The Flash and kind of Western comics, is Barry Allen died after 20 years, and Wally West, Kid Flash, got to be Flash for another 20 years. There were 20 years when Barry Allen the Flash did not exist. You could read comics for 20 years and never read about him. And they have just now, in the last 10 years, been like, never mind again. Now it's Barry again. And that's frustrating. You don't get to feel growth. You don't get to see these characters go anywhere.
Well, I mean, you kind of can in the short term, but then, like, when you're into comics for a while, it's not the greatest.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is kind of like a longer discussion that I think would be fun to have. I don't know if we need to do it in the middle of Spider-Gwen, which is so just, like, nice and innocent, but it's like, I get really sick of people just relying on IPs instead of being creative.
Yeah. And I think that's what is so fun and refreshing about Spider-Gwen, is it's kind of like that Wally West Flash. It's kind of like Boruto, where it's like, you know what? We know who Spider-Man is. We know how this story plays out, but here's a fresh cast and fresh stakes, and you actually feel like things can happen because it doesn't have to appeal to the big corporate offices quite as much as, say, the mainline Spider-Man does. Yeah. You know? And I think that's fun.
Yeah, it is really fun. It's a fun story. I don't know that I have much else to say about it, just because it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like it was done so well and told, like, the art's good, the characters are good, the dialogue is good, the little jokes they make are good. But outside of that, I don't know that I have a lot to say about it.
That's fair. I feel like I kind of said my piece. I feel like Spider-Gwen's fun. I'm excited to see her in Spider-Verse 2.
Yeah, I'm excited for that too. Like, I feel like it was a really good adaptation of the character. And this is one of the things about Into the Spider-Verse is, like, they had a really good adaptation of the character, but it's also because they made her a little bit different, you know? That Spider-Gwen is different than this Spider-Gwen, and I really appreciate that. Mm-hmm. And their Spider-Pig, or Spider-Ham, is way different than this Spider-Ham.
Their Spider-Ham is John Mulaney.
Yeah, and it's fantastic.
And I like it. Yeah,
So, tell some original stories.
Yeah, that's basically the motto of... It was refreshing to read Spider-Gwen and be like, oh man, yeah, comics can be fun sometimes. They don't have to be a full-time job. And...
The irony being that Dallas is trying to make comics a full-time job.
Yes, I do like them a lot. Okay, I'm pretty much done talking about Spider-Man 2. Do you want to, like, flesh out the episode a little bit by talking about, like, even outside of the world comics, what are things you're excited about right now, T? What are projects you got going on, things you want to consume? What's exciting?
I'm so on the spot, so I don't even think of anything. Like, I'm doing a video game content, but I haven't been consistent at it lately, so it's like, I don't want to be consistent at it before I told you where to go.
What video games are you playing?
I played a bunch of Doom recently, but here's a game that you all should play, is A Short Hike. If 2020 has sucked for you, go and find the game A Short Hike and play it. It's wonderful. It'll reignite some of your hope in the world. Like, I'm serious.
Yeah?
It was fantastic. I think you should play it. It's only a few hours long.
Okay. I could do that. I could swing that. I am very excited to play Mario tonight. We're recording this the night that Mario All-Stars comes out on Switch. And I'm not as much of a gamer as a lot of my friends are, but, like, your boy loves some Mario. And I'm very, very excited to play Nintendo 64 Mario again. I'm very excited to play Sunshine and Galaxy for the first time.
Yeah, it's in like 6.5 hours.
I think that'll be... It's actually whenever my wife falls asleep is actually when that happens for
me. When does your wife fall asleep?
It's a crapshoot, man. Anywhere between 10 and 12.
Okay.
Crapshoot.
I'm married to an insomniac, so I'm like, it's a very different experience for me.
I recently got a backpack with a clear front for my cat to take my cat on walks, and that makes me excited.
That's way fun.
Yeah.
You know, that's the other thing. I might cut this out, but I think JP tried to call in the middle of this.
We definitely did.
Oh.
Oh.
He fell asleep.
JP
missed it, but I'm sure he'll be here next week. We've got some fun interviews coming up that we're going to do with the creators. We interviewed the creators of Kanto, and we'll do a review on theirs. We interviewed the creator of Spencer and Locke, which I didn't love, but JP and Dallas read it. And so we'll post that. We also interviewed Kyle Starks again.
Because he's our boy. And I talked basketball with him for an hour, and it was
JP
great.
there? Or was just you?
Nope, just me. Just me and Kyle Starks. Shooting the crap, talking about basketball. First half is a lot about him as a creator, what he's got going on right now. He's currently doing like a sticker club and on digital commissions and such. And then, if that's all you care about, you can end it there. But if you care at all about the NBA, the next 30 minutes are very unfiltered Kyle Starks opinions about basketball as a whole, who the good guy and bad guy teams are right now, and the drama that has been the NBA this season. So I had a lot of fun doing that.
The drama that has been 2020, but we'll leave it at that instead of getting back into politics for the end of the podcast.
Just
at this point, it's kind of like with all the stuff we have at the beginning, we get all the stuff at the end, and we could just have a politics.
Just have a nice little Oreo cookie of darkness, Spider-Gwen, and darkness again.
Which is life sometimes, you know?
It is, yeah. I think I have the pick next for the comic. It's going to be something long, I think. I'm going to be mean. I don't know.
We're going to read Chew?
I would love to read Chew. Chew or Hellboy are my two
I'd be interested in Hellboy because I really liked that movie as a kid, and I think my mom was like, "Why do you like Hellboy so much?"
You're like, Guillermo del Toro rules, Mom.
I don't even know who that is.
The director.
Wait, he directed Hellboy?
Uh-huh.
I do remember who that is because my wife likes watching Troll Hunters, and he did all that too.
Yeah,
which is
he's done a lot of stuff.
Random connection.
Yeah, Guillermo del Toro. He also did Pacific Rim, which was trash but had kaiju, so I watched it.
You kidding? Pacific Rim was so fun.
That movie was garbage, but it was fun.
It was so fun garbage. I mean, like, come on, is there anything valuable in it? No, but you get to see a giant robot punch a monster. Like, what else do you want from that story?
It was everything I needed, honestly.
You're like, this is what I paid for.
I have been really enjoying stuff like that recently. Like, this year's been so heavy that my wife called me out recently. She's like, you only like to watch heavy things, and I cannot take it right now. She's like, we're not watching True Detective. We're not watching Murder on the whatever the hell you want to watch. No, it's too evil, too dark. Nope, too heavy. We have to watch something fun. So she's like, we're watching Glee. And I was like, pull my fingernails out. And 3 episodes later, I was like, I love this show.
Really?
Yeah. Glee has been A+ material. No, it hasn't. No, it's a D as far as television goes.
It.
But man, is it wholesome.
Have you seen Tenet?
I hated it.
You hated it?
Did you watch Tenet?
I did watch Tenet.
What did you think of Tenet?
The more that I think about Tenet, the less I like it. But, like, yeah. I think that you should see it because, like, it's visually cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Christopher Nolan does a great job as
somebody described it like, it's kind of like one of those little brain teasers that you're like, how does this thing work? So it's, like, fun for that reason.
I just feel like... Here's my unpopular opinion about Tenet. I thought he came up with a really cool concept with the, like, backwards entropy. And then he wanted it to be more... Then he thought about it for 5 years until he couldn't explain it very well anymore. And that's not that I didn't understand the movie. I got the movie. I just was like, man, that was way more complicated than it was fun.
Yeah.
And also...
It really does seem like one of these things where it's like, we're going to make this intentionally hard, so you have to see it 3 times.
That man needs to chill with the machine guns during important dialogue. I also watched Inception before watching Tenet to, like, get myself in the mood. And he is a huge fan of, like, this dialogue is essential. And you're like...
I know a bunch of people complained about that in Interstellar as well.
Yeah, it's that, and that, Hans Zimmer, and explosions are, like, what make...
It wasn't Hans Zimmer in this last one.
I know it wasn't, because he's doing Dune, which is going to be dope.
I did see the trailer for Dune, and I was like, okay.
I would like to see The Worm. And The Worm came out, and I said, okay, I would like to see it. That's a nice worm. I was going to see it anyway. Favorite book, but...
See, I really like that book too, but that was one of the reasons that I didn't want to do it.
Yeah, because you're like, there's no way they could adapt that well.
Yeah, like, how do you adapt Dune?
You don't.
Because it's, like, intentionally inaccessible, and that's why it's good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is that it puts, like, so much world building into this that you, like, won't understand, but then that creates, like, a very specific feeling. So I don't know how they're supposed to recreate why Dune is good.
Yeah, it just feels so vast and lived in.
Yeah.
I feel like Dune would be such a better Game of Thrones style long form television show than movie. But
That'd be cool.
But I guess Game of Thrones wouldn't have had that big of an audience if it wasn't good, though. You know,
Yeah.
So I was about to be like, who the hell would watch it? But like, who the hell was going to watch Game of Thrones until Game of Thrones was Game
amazing.
of Thrones? You know. So, but I love the cast. And I love the director. Have you seen Arrival from the director?
Oh, really? I really like Arrival.
Yeah, same guy. And he also, his one condition for shooting Dune was that they had to let him film in a desert and use practical effects as much as possible, which speaks to my inner nerd a lot.
That is good.
Yeah.
I like that this is just turning into like a pop culture hour.
Yeah, dude. It's fine. I got nowhere to be. Got class in like 20 minutes. But, I watched a garbage fun movie the other day. So, much different than the kind of garbage fun that is Pacific Rim. I watched the new Russell Crowe movie Unhinged with my in-laws because my mother-in-law was like, I have a movie we're going to watch. And we always say yes because they're either good or horrible, and she gets really grumpy when they're horrible, and that's fun. This one, not good at all. I just want to preface that before, but it was the most fun I've had in a movie in a long time. It's basically a thriller about Russell Crowe having road rage against this lady. The movie opens with him like murdering his family because his wife left him and he was like this aggro male, and he's gained a ton of weight for this role, so he's like this big old Russell Crowe. Kills his family right off the bat, and I was like, we're in for a ride. And then he gets like cut off by this lady, and he just decides he's like, time to murder her whole family. And he becomes like this slasher villain that's like, dun, 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 like chasing her in this big truck. It was so over the top and bad that thank goodness I was in an empty movie theater for it, because I just laughed the whole time. It was like a comedy at that point, just to see how over the top the show was going to get. Movie? Yeah, it just came out. Huh. That and Tenet were the 2 new movies playing in our movie theater. And Utah movie theaters are half open.
Yeah. Like when we saw Tenet, there were like 8 people in the whole theater, and we were 5 of them.
Yeah. We were 4 of 4 in Unhinged, and that felt appropriate.
Good to know. Who directed Unhinged? Okay.
I don't know. No idea. But it was terrible in the best way. It's pretty gratuitous, though. Like, there's this part where this cop is going to save them. I don't feel bad spoiling, because there's no way you're going to watch Unhinged. Come on. And this cop, like, pulls up, and they're, like, really tense. They're getting chased by Russell Crowe, who's now in a minivan, which is hilarious. And he's, like, he looks like a cartoon character. He looks like Kingpin from Edge of the Spider-Verse. Just behind the wheel of this minivan. The cop pulls up, and they, like, roll down the windows. They're like, sir, behind us! That's the bad guy that you know about because it's a movie! And he's like, sorry, no can help. There's a car wreck back there. It was like, what? There's a murderer behind her, and you're like, nope, gotta go to traffic stuff. And then he like slows down, And then this cement truck just runs over the car. Unrelated to what's going on. Just, there was enough chaos that the cement truck just pancakes this cop car, and I burst out laughing. I was like, what is going on? What is going on in this movie?
I know that my mom likes that sometimes. She's like, what are all the, like, the B action movies that are bad, but they, like, speak to part of human nature, almost?
That's Unhinged. I don't know if your mom would like it, though, because it is rated R solely because of F words. So I don't know, that's your mom's speed. But,
probably not.
But that is very much how I describe it. That's like a C+, B-
so the
action movie.
question was your mother-in-law upset that you were so entertained by it?
She left halfway through the movie because it was just too much. And then she tried to blame us for it. And we're like, you picked it. And then she got all grumpy and quiet. And then me and my wife were just laughing about how over the top, and our father-in-law were just laughing about how over the top it was. She's like, I really don't think it's appropriate to laugh at that kind of thing. And we were like, too damn bad. Too funny.
Oh dear. That does sound funny.
It was a good time. Yeah, that movie was very unhinged. It was appropriately named.
We all got to watch a bad movie every once in a while. Which is like, we should read some bad comics once in a while and laugh at that. You hated Tokyo Ghoul.
I hated Tokyo Ghoul. Tokyo Ghoul is bad. In this podcast, I will lay out for you why Tokyo Ghoul is bad. Go back and watch our Tokyo Ghoul episode.
It's pretty funny. Just because of the amount of or what's the negative things we say about it? Because it's a few.
We hate it.
I didn't hate it.
I'm not a 14-year-old emo girl from 2008.
Fine.
I don't like it. I feel like you had to have raccoon hair to like that book. Remember raccoon hair?
No, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like how his hair turned white?
No, like back in the mid-2000s when like emos had like big poofy hair that was like long, and then they also like bleached it in like strips so it looked like a raccoon pattern.
Oh man, that was
Remember
a
that
weird
phase?
thing.
Yeah, those people like Tokyo Ghoul. That's the kind of person you have to be. And if you're that kind of person listening to our podcast, we love you. Tell your friends about us. Listen to us. Leave us a good review on Apple Podcast.
Oh dear.
We hate your book.
Well, I don't know that we have much else to say. So before we start alienating more people with our politics, our comics opinions, and trashing on Tokyo Ghoul, I think we'll say goodbye for today.
I'm going to start the Trashing Tokyo Ghoul podcast where I go issue by issue and just hate read Tokyo Ghoul.
I'm still telling you, man, Mystery Science 3000. This is going to be the end of like 5 episodes where I'm like, Mystery Science 3000.
Until we finally do it.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Peace, everybody.
Ciao.